Hello, welcome to CESMII Studios in our broadcast of 6 Degrees of Smart Manufacturing. I am Conrad Leva,
And I'm Mike Yost.
and in this series we cover different perspectives and topics on smart manufacturing from the many points of view of manufacturing leaders, practitioners, engineers, integrators, consultants, and educators, the many people involved in the smart manufacturing journey. Today we're having a 20-minute chat here, a retrospective of 2020. This is our throwback Thanksgiving episode. And you can use the Q&A panel to send us questions. However, we might have to answer some questions later at our LinkedIn group. We will give you that link at the end of the show.
Yes, thank you, Conrad. And just for those of you who haven't been with us all year necessarily, give you a little bit of background on why we talk about 6 degrees of smart manufacturing. And it's based on the concept of 6 degrees of separation, which is the idea that we are all just 6 or fewer social connections away from knowing every single person on the planet. And so from our perspective, when we look at how we're going to educate each other about smart manufacturing, how do we gain the knowledge that we need to make smart manufacturing a reality? We believe the best way to do that is to connect with each other and share with each other across all those different perspectives that Conrad talked about just a second ago. And so to that end, this year and actually a little bit into the previous year, we've been asking this question to all of the people in that group, our ecosystem that Conrad talked about. What does smart manufacturing look like to you? We have 38 videos that are available on our website and on our YouTube channel of all those different folks, from manufacturers to academic leaders to governmental leaders and solution providers, all sharing their perspectives on what smart manufacturing looks like to them. And so we think that we've learned quite a bit, and that's what we're going to look at here over the next 20 minutes with everybody through the course of the year. But we also think it's time for us to essentially put a bow on this question and move forward and start to engage in other ways. So what are you going to say, Conrad?
Yeah, I mean, it's been great reviewing this body of work. And we definitely noticed in reviewing it that the tone has changed this year. And not just because of the pandemic, but because we feel that we've reached a level of maturity in the smart manufacturing conversation, that we've moved beyond the early adopters. And we believe that the big news for 2020 is that smart manufacturing is now mainstream. We're mainstream.
We made
it. We made it. I mean, really, it is a time to celebrate that we're here at this inflection point in time. And that all that work from the early leaders, the early adopters has really worked. And we're going to look back and at some of the data points that we have on this journey of why we feel this way.
Yep.
As this is the big news here for 2020.
Yeah, and Conrad and I have been around a long time and spent a lot of time in the industry, as have a lot of other people. So there are a lot of things that have been happening more than just in 2020. So it wasn't something that magically happened just this year. But we're gonna jump in here. We're gonna start by taking a look at the manufacturers that we had with us in our webcasts, and that came and shared their perspectives that led us to the point, in combination with the other conversations, to say, hey, we think this is, as Conrad said, now mainstream.
Yeah, and we can start by talking, for example, our conversation with Linde started on how they were really taking advantage of a lot of the low-cost sensing and focus on avoiding machine failure, which for them is a big deal, because they're almost can view themselves as a utility to their customers, and really uptime is of the utmost important to them. And energy savings is very important to them. They're very energy intensive initiative, and they need to optimize energy. So really, it was one of the leading use cases for in this journey of smart manufacturing and for the Institute.
Right. And they've been part of CESMII from the beginning.
Yeah.
And so take that background, those insights from a manufacturer like that, couple them with the conversations we had with Corning, which has evolved into how smart manufacturing is actually integrated into their product quality architecture at the highest levels of the business. So smart manufacturing plays a critical role there from Corning's perspective as it pertains to quality, which is critically important to them. Similarly, we had Johnson & Johnson on the webcast as well. They're talking about the future of personalized medicine and the role that smart manufacturing plays in their ability to meet that and keep up with that. And that's a pretty transformational type of spot or role that smart manufacturing fills.
And more evidence of this journey, because Corning, once we went from just talking about operations and started adding quality to the equation, and how the data and the analysis is being used now throughout these cross disciplines. What's interesting, and Johnson & Johnson also talked about mode 1 versus mode 2, and how they started moving from just optimizing in mode 1 to doing more transformational things with the smart manufacturing platform. And that also showed more maturity on that journey.
Yeah, and that's, we can spend a lot of time talking about, is this a transformational discussion, or is this an evolution of continuous improvement? But maybe we'll get there later in the conversation.
Yeah. Well, in General Mills then also talked about, it's not just about technology, but about culture, and how important the culture was to their transformation.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's important. We note them as early adopters, and they're out there. As we mentioned before, this is not a journey that started for them, any of these folks in 2020. But it's been valuable insight that we've gained from them, and there's still a lot of areas that they're looking at. Where does smart manufacturing fit?
Yeah, and they're still all very active on the smart manufacturing journey, but they were some of the manufacturers that really help us in as early adopters set the tone for the smart manufacturing journey.
Right.
And we've also seen lately how another indicator is that the educators, the college educators, the workforce educators have recognized that there's a skill gap, and that smart manufacturing skills are really needed in the workforce. So several of our guests have validated that, and I really feel that once the educators feel that something needs to be folded into the curriculum, that this another indicator that has gone mainstream.
Right. Right. And it's not just that they've identified there's the need for it, right? Because that typically comes from their partnerships with industry. You have manufacturers asking for it, but not only have I identified the need, but they're actually taking steps and delivering as well.
Yeah, so we had like Sudarshan Rachuri from the DOE in one of our shows talk about that skill gap and how important it was for us and as an institute to try to help in filling those gaps. Skills like data literacy, data science, machine learning, interoperability, cloud, all these are now becoming mainstream in education programs, thanks to the work CESMII is doing in co-funding. For example, with Penn State, we just released a curriculum around a Factory 4 educational toolkit. And it really shows how engineering physics-based models and statistical analytics and machine learning all has to come together now on the plant floor. So we're really maturing to where Python is the new Excel at the plant floor.
Oh boy. Yeah, I think one of the other things that was I think exciting for me to hear, or good for me to learn this year, was a conversation that we had with Purdue, and that conversation was how much that they and their team had learned from their time working with organizations in Germany and how they're handling education around Industry 4.0. And difference that that they talked about, we talked about in that episode, was that education in Germany is focused at the postgraduate level, right? And in the U.S., we're starting to see programs like you just mentioned with Penn State, and also with Purdue and others that are focused at the undergraduate level.
Yeah. So and all this work that we're co-funding here at CESMII and the educational platform is really stuff that we next year intend to promote really widespread national adoption. So those are just examples of how these efforts are moving forward. I love that Purdue also stresses that this is a new smart manufacturing degree that is a little cross-discipline, and it really points out the need for education that's a little more cross-discipline, so that an industrial engineer or process engineer can work side by side with better understanding of data science techniques with folks that know that technology the best, so we can all leverage that data that is now available to them and really use them to optimize processes.
Well, it just makes so much sense, right? I mean, you have these digital natives, right? These students that are growing up with these supercomputers in their pockets and all around them. So why wouldn't it be in play when you have a chosen profession that is manufacturing? Of course it would.
Yeah, and it's not just the 4-year degree programs. I think next year we're going to see more of towards the 2-year college level, really trying to take care of those, like you call them, digital native folks. But also, how do we upskill the existing workforce? I'm seeing a lot more programs and a lot more emphasis, hands-on type of education for that workforce.
Yeah, this is critically important, right? And we learned a ton from our educators and continue to work with our educators and learn with them. But you know, we can't talk about 2020, Conrad, without talking about COVID, right?
Yeah, COVID was.
So everybody knows, just quickly, so everybody knows that Conrad started working for CESMII the day before we had to postpone or eventually cancel the annual meeting because of COVID. So it was disruptive on a lot of levels.
Yeah, it sure was. And one of the first things we talked about was that COVID really that really forced us to act at different levels. There was the immediate short-term response that was needed, and we had partners in the ecosystem that jumped into that, but that there's also like a recovery, like a new norm that we need to adapt to, and also longer term recovery tactics that were in play.
Yeah, and if you remember, Conrad, as soon as it happened, we did a couple of things, right? We brought back the former CEO of CESMII and Jim Wetzel, and we basically asked the question: should we be even talking about smart manufacturing right now? Or, you know, with this disruption, with this pandemic, are there bigger things we should be worried about? And his response was no. And what he had seen and what we've seen come to bear since then is that, you know, smart manufacturing is absolutely smack dab at the middle of both the response and the longer term recovery, right? And we asked him that question: what does smart manufacturing look like to you? And he said it looks like help, right? And one of the things that we saw in our ecosystem as well was the partnership that we have at NC State and their Nonwovens Institute, and how they were able to take a pre-production facility and start producing materials to make N95 masks. Right?
Yeah, and great examples in our ecosystem. There were many of leadership. I mean, companies like Honeywell, Johnson and Johnson, General Mills. There are so many that responded and had to adopt and pivot, but especially noticeable all the PPE pivoting that we did. But it was also brought to the attention the supply chain, and we had really not been talking enough about the digital supplier network. And we were fortunate enough to have Thor from West Virginia University join us for one episode and discuss his new book on that, and how the companies that had more of a digital supplier network in place, not that those networks are where they need to be, we really need to make them much more connected, but they were still at an advantage over with more data about what was going on and visibility into the network versus the ones that didn't have a digital supplier network in place.
Right. Well, and we took that conversation and we continued it onward and had a conversation with Ethan Rogers from the Department of Energy about how the impact on the supply chain translates back to energy savings, within those operations and, broader scale across the supply chain as well. And then, we had CESMII CEO John Dyke on to talk about the work of the Manufacturing USA Institutes, the structure under which CESMII resides with the federal government. Talk about their recommendation to create a national manufacturing guard and to create the infrastructure required for a data backbone from a digital supply chain perspective, as well as training up the workforce, current and future, and how critical smart manufacturing is in data and manufacturing to the long-term recovery of the nation.
Yeah, and I expect to see more on that topic of the National Manufacturing Guard and National Manufacturing Resiliency infrastructure next year. I think that's just been the start of a conversation in some bills in Congress, but the bottom line has been that disruption has been a catalyst, that I think it's broken much of the stagnation out there. And the fact is, there's no more business as usual. So whoever was coasting around, watching other people transform, had to have a wake-up call anyway because of the pandemic. So I think this has really woken up a lot of that initiative to transform, to modernize in a lot of companies. And that brings us to CESMII's role in helping the ecosystem move forward and accelerate through clarity.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Conrad. Right now, as people, for whatever reason, like you said, driven by the pandemic or accelerating plans they already had in place, okay, yeah, we need this, right? We need smart manufacturing. We need to adopt it. We need to educate people on it, right? Well, what is it, right? And there's so much, lack of clarity out there generally in the marketplace that you need an organization like a CESMII, an ecosystem that has the authority and the capabilities to define what smart manufacturing is. And that's what led us on the path to have the conversation.
Yeah, I mean, really motivated by the education programs that we're putting in place and the educator network. We really needed to refresh the smart manufacturing definition. We really needed to drill down on the guiding principles behind it. because we often hear people just focus on little pieces of it. So for example, we talked before about continuous improvement versus transformation. And if all you're looking at is to put some sensors here and there and move the needle 10%, you know, gain 10% performance or something, you're not doing smart manufacturing. But that means that we have to be clear on what is smart manufacturing, right?
Right. And that's not to say what you're doing isn't smart, right? If we're going to talk about the transformational capabilities, right, let's talk about digital transformation. You know, we crafted and had a session, a couple of sessions actually, on the what we call the truth table, right? That is intended to embody what we call the and conversation, right? So you can use, to your point there, Conrad, people can use sensors and solve a problem for them in a plant. And they should be able to solve other problems in the same plants and other problems, you know, that they don't even see coming yet, because of the power of the data, the understanding of the data in context, the basically unlocking the information that's available that historically has been, you know, trapped away. Right. So that's an important conversation to start to distinguish of, you know, why do we have to call something smart versus not smart.
And now that this has become mainstream, it's very important for everybody to get educated, to come up to speed, and really assess the stage for us for next year, right? Because we don't want anybody to be left behind. And so what does that mean? It means that we need to work on democratizing smart manufacturing more than ever. It means that we need to energize smart manufacturing innovation, Mike.
Yep, yep, absolutely. And I think that's a critical point, like you mentioned. And we are, those of you who watch this show know that we're usually very strict on the timing. We're a little bit over today, but we wanted to get through everything here. We will have some additional sessions we're going to do to drill deeper into things like the definition and the use of the definition. And from a CESMII perspective, you know, we've created that definition because we have a mandate to democratize smart manufacturing. And so it becomes a tool for us to use to provide clarity and drive activity. And again, it has to be all focused on how we are energizing the ecosystem, and how we're saving energy and all those pieces that go in with that. But yeah, I think it's really powerful.
I'm looking forward to 2021. And in our next episode, we're going to talk more about it, but I think it will be the year of the platform. I think it's the year where we move automation instead of a centerpiece to a side dish, and we place the workforce at the center where it needs to be. And where, you know, with more mature initiatives like Connected Worker, like where AI is being viewed as an assistant and not a replacement. So I'm really excited about 2021. We're going to be, I think there's topics like resiliency and energy, sustainability, that the conversation is just getting started on those topics, and I expect a lot more next year.
Yep, I agree. And I think it's been a fantastic year. It's been fantastic working it with you in partnership, Conrad. And you know, we think it's still valuable to get everybody's insights. So we'll keep going with this notion of 6 degrees of smart manufacturing, but we're going to switch the conversation from just defining what it is and talking about what it looks like to people, and talking about more how it's able to be an energizing factor for them to innovate and succeed with what it is that they do. So with that, we would bring this show to a wrap. Would encourage all of you to engage with us. Conrad mentioned earlier that we have a LinkedIn group that we would encourage you all to join with us. We will post the link to this recording there. It's also on our YouTube channel and on our website. And the best way for us to continue to learn is for everybody to continue to engage together.
Yes, stay engaged. I mean, CESMII definitely has a big role in facilitating this ecosystem and driving innovation forward and democratizing smart manufacturing. And please join us for our next episode in December, where we look ahead at 2021 and a lot of the exciting things that are in the pipeline.
Right. And to Connor's point, we normally go twice a month. We will not in November because of the U.S. Thanksgiving holiday and also the Christmas holiday at the end of December. So we'll see everybody in the second week of December. And until then, everybody take care.